tonight, federal government delegation meets with Labour on possibilities of averting tomorrow's planned protests and industrial action. Again, Boko Haram terrorists attacked Governor Babagana Zulum's convoy in Borno State, 2 kilometers away from Baga. Federal government holds interdenominational church service ahead of Independence Day celebration on October 1st. And fighting breaks out in Armenia and Azerbaijan over disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region, with both civilians and combatants killed. Plus, sports stories. It's only a few hours now to the commencement of the industrial action and nationwide protest declared by the organised labour over the increase in the pump price of petrol and the new electricity tariff. But the federal government's delegation and labour union leaders are still locked in a closed-door meeting to reach an agreement. The meeting, which has now entered into a technical session, started at 7:30 p.m. as both parties continue to discuss possibilities of averting the planned strike. The government says the dialogue, which was earlier scheduled for Monday, will now hold at the Presidential Villa Banquet Hall tonight. The Labour is asking the federal government to revert to the old price of petrol and electricity tariff, noting that it is not in the best interest of the people. But the federal government is insisting that the removal of subsidy is inevitable and will help it concentrate on other aspects of the economy. After a series of dialogue, both parties have not been able to reach a compromise, as Labour maintains it would not change its position. Our State House correspondent, Kayla Megwa, who has been monitoring the meeting, gives us an update.
As you can see, the doors are locked right behind me, and that's because organized labor and the federal government are in a technical session at this moment, trying to sort out a few details so they can meet up with this midnight deadline that was given by organized labor. If you recall, they had said if the federal government doesn't reverse the tariff on electricity and the high cost of petrol, if those things are not done before midnight today, that there was going to be a nationwide downing of tools that will be accompanied by massive protests across the country. Well, this meeting is a last effort to come to some sort of agreement before that deadline reaches. It's been weeks of threats, court orders. The actual opening session was a bit frosty today because Mr. Chrisingige had mentioned the order barring them from going on their strike action, and Labour on this side, the organized Labour on this side, had spoken to the federal government about an already existing order that stops them from increasing the price of petrol and electricity. So it started off a bit frosty, but this technical session, they say, is supposed to help both parties come to some sort of arrangement before midnight tonight. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Thanks a lot, Kayla. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House of Representatives also met with Labour leaders earlier today, and the meeting ended without the NLC reversing its decision to embark on a nationwide strike action. The Speaker called the meeting to mediate and broker an amicable solution to the impasse between the federal government and organised Labour over the federal government's removal of petrol subsidy and increase in electricity tariff. Our correspondent, Linda Kigbe, reports.
This meeting is an attempt by the House of Representatives to intervene in the impasse between organised labour and the federal government.
In some cases,
the Nigeria Labour Congress has threatened to embark on a nationwide strike from Monday, September the 28th, unless the federal government reverses its decision to remove subsidy on petrol and the increase on electricity tariff.
Mr. Speaker, as we are aware, these two policy pronouncements were made without any consultation with organized labor, and it has led to a lot of dislocation in the socio-economic sphere of many Nigerians. So it is because of the fact that it has had a negative impact on the well-being of Nigerian workers and even Nigerians. And we thought that these policy issues need to be discussed, particularly that Labour have engaged this issue in the life of our country for the past 30 years.
Rarely.
But the Speaker of the House of Representatives appeals to the NLC not to embark on the nationwide strike, noting that the consequences will be dire.
We can't go on this strike. I'm going to be very, we can't, in good conscience. Not because we're on the same page on most of the things. We're on the same page, and you know that. We, the leadership, and the House of Representatives are on the same page with you. But what is the consequence? And that's the bigger picture of going on strike. When we have a complete government shutdown, the people we seek to protect invariably end up holding the short end of the stick. So it ends up defeating the purpose.
The meeting continues behind closed door. Speaking to journalists afterwards, the NLC president states the position of the organized labor. He also speaks on the court order stopping the NLC from going on strike.
If the issues are not addressed, you are aware that we have given a notice, and that notice will certainly expire by tomorrow. We have not received the order as of today. We don't also know the details of any order. And clearly speaking, we cannot speak on something that is not before us. So the reality is that I've also shared with you. On the issue of electricity tariff, go and confirm as journalists, we have a successive court order, not court order, court judgment that have nullified the increase.
Barring any last-minute reversal of the position of the NLC or the federal government, the planned nationwide strike is set to begin on Monday. At this point, it is not clear how long it will last and if there will be full compliance.
And shortly after the meeting with the Labour leaders, the Speaker also met with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. He disclosed this via his Twitter handle, where he also said that with the successful meetings, he hopes a strike would be averted. Here in Lagos, the state chapters of different labour unions are insisting there is no going back on their proposed strike against fuel price and electricity tariff hike. The resolution was reached after a closed-door meeting of the unions at the NLC Secretariat in Lagos. The NLC's National Deputy President, Amechi Asubuni, who spoke on behalf of the unions, says though they have a delegation engaged in the federal government, they will still go ahead with the planned strike and the protests.
Rising from this strategic section, jointly held by TUC and NSC, especially from the point of Lagos State, which we believe the resolution here is a resolution across Nigeria. The action is actually set to take effect from tomorrow to protest against the arbitrary increase on PMS and also increase in the electricity tariff without recourse to the suffering of Nigerians. Labour have deliberated on this matter through their organs, and they have come to the conclusion that the best way to resist this action is to go on a nationwide strike, including protests. And that we have come to emphasize that the action proposed to take effect from tomorrow is still holding, and we believe right to protest is constitutional, and nobody can set it aside. It's your fundamental human right to go and protest anytime you feel unsafe with any policy whatsoever. And we are willing to engage that process, and we are going to enforce our right tomorrow.
To security issues now barely 2 days after a convoy of the Borno state government was attacked. Governor Babagana Zulum's convoy again suffered another attack today on his way out of Baga. Professor Zulum had departed from Baga at about 10:30 a.m. after a 2-day visit to receive indigents of the town who had been in exile for 21 months. But a few kilometers away from Baga, the gunmen struck and opened fire on the escort of the governor. The convoy was being escorted out of Baga by the military, who replied to the gunshots and cleared the way for the governor. The governor has since arrived in Maiduguri, the capital city, after successfully performing the resettlement issuing that took him to Baga. The Inspector General of Police has condemned the attack on the Borno State governor by Boko Haram terrorists. A police chief, Mohammed Adamu, says he has directed the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of the police medical services to ensure adequate provision of Medicare and for the officers injured during the attack. He's also assuring Nigerians, particularly those in Borno State, that the morale of police officers and other security agencies involved in providing security, especially in the state, has not and will not be dampened by the incident. Rather, the incident has further served as impetus in strengthening the resolve and commitment of the personnel of the force in the fight against insurgency. The IGP therefore calls for the continuous support and trust of the public and the police, while commiserating with families of those who lost loved ones in the attack. As Nigeria counts down to the celebration of its 60th independence anniversary, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, is asking Nigerians to contribute their quota to national development. Speaking at an interdenominational service to mark the upcoming Independence Day, Mr. Mustafa, who's representing Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, says this anniversary calls for a rebirth of the Nigerian nation, and no group is more qualified to lead it than religious bodies. He therefore calls on the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, to provide leadership to its faithful to make Nigeria the great nation it has been destined to be.
For us in Nigeria, Nehemiah should be taken as a metaphor for that Nigeria who resides either in the country or outside, would cry to God to give him the wherewithal to use the abundant opportunities in the country to address our challenges of nation building. Fortunately for us, in Nigeria, our walls are not yet broken, but have cracks that could lead to break if not properly addressed.
We continue with Thanksgiving services, this time in Edo State, where the newly elected Governor Godwin Obaseki and his deputy Philip Schreiber also joined faithful for a Thanksgiving service over their victory in the just concluded Edo governorship election. The chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Edo State Chapter, Bishop Oriname Kure, describes their victory as the will of God.
Members of the clergy have been brought together for a special interfaith service by the Christian Association of Nigeria at the Ugbe Court section of the Samuel Bemudia Stadium. Among those in attendance are the Edo State Executive Council members, led by Governor Godwin Obaseki, the legislature, as well as leaders of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. The Christian body says it had prayed for a peaceful governorship election in Edo State, which has now come to pass. While thanking President Muhammad Buhari and other stakeholders for a successful governorship poll, the clergy also asks Governor Obaseki to avoid politics of acrimony, but focus on his second-term mandate, which according to them is a divine mandate.
Your victory is divine. It is evidently the will of God and a proof of the confidence that the Edo people repose in you as a man of integrity, steadfastness of character, having unfeigned love and passion, uncommon diligence and commitment to your destiny assignment.
Mr. Obaseki takes the podium. He starts with the prophetic proclamation taken from the book of Genesis, chapter 45, verse 7.
And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. And the church says, Amen.
Mr. Obaseki says he is under no illusion as to the task ahead.
Our responsibility today is to continue to unite Edo, to unite with our kith and kin in our sub-region, so that we can have the peace that is required. We can create the environment that is needed to begin the tedious and enormous task of building or rebuilding our state and our country.
The Christian Association of Nigeria believes that victory comes from God. They say that God, who has brought Governor Godwin Obaseki this far, will also see him through the next 4 years.
In part two, after the break, People's Democratic Party leaders meet with former President Olusegun Obasanjo as party begins re-strategizing ahead of 2023. Join us again. Welcome back. If it has joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television in Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Federal government delegation meets with Labour on possibilities of averting tomorrow's planned protest and strike. Again, Boko Haram terrorists attack Governor Babagana Zulum's convoy in Borno State, 2 kilometers away from Baga. Federal government holds interdenominational church service ahead of Independence Day celebration on October 1st. And fighting breaks out in Armenia and Azerbaijan over disputed Nagorno and Karabakh region, with both civilians and combatants killed. As part of efforts at repositioning the People's Democratic Party ahead of the 2023 general elections, the governor of Bauchi State and chairman of the PDP 2019 Election Review Committee, Senator Bala Mohammed, has met with former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Speaking exclusively to Channels Television after the meeting behind closed doors with the former president in Abuja, Governor Mohammed says members of the committee are on the road to galvanizing founding fathers towards promoting good governance in the country. Governor Mohammed, who earlier had a similar meeting with a former president of the Senate, Senator David Mark, explains that there is urgent need to rescue Nigeria from poor governance. The meeting had in attendance former governors of Niger State, Babangida Aliyu, and his Jigawa State counterpart, Sule Lamido, and a former minister of Special Duties, Mr. Kabiru Turaki.
We're here with our leaders, a committee set up by the National Working Committee of the PDP to go around and sound the leaders and some of the owners or founding fathers of the party, and everybody, to sound them on where we are and where we want to go and what happened before, especially when we lost election in 2019, and which was like a pattern on 2015. And of course, to learn from our mistakes and see how we can maximize our fortunes or our victory in Edo, so that at least we will provide Nigerians with the most credible platform, which is the PDP, for which to bequeath good governance to Nigerians. The nation has never been so divided. The nation has never been so cowed into a level of poverty, despondency, and malignancy, and of course disillusionment. We need to reinvent and to rediscover ourselves. So this is a sort of PDP initiative under the National Working Committee that we are looking at Nigeria beyond 2023.
Meanwhile, the Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu has been applauded for increasing the state's internally generated revenue from about 10.9 billion naira to 30 billion naira between 2017 and 2019. The commendations were made during launch of a book documenting his achievements in office. After the book launch, the governor continued his campaign to Ifedore, local government area of the state.
Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu steps into the hall for a meeting with these Muslim women prayer group leaders. The leaders are from the 18 local government areas of the state. The group, which boasts its numerical strength across the state, is promising to deploy it to ensure the governor's re-election.
We are going to give you our vote from the humanitarian election slated for 10/10/2020.
From here to the launch of a book documenting his achievements so far.
I do this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
The editor-in-chief of the book, titled Season of Success, gives a background into the reason for the book.
What we and our future generation will see in the next 4 years and enjoy, among other dividends of democracy, is a deep sea port, a busy cargo airspace, a more bubbling airport, a realized bitumen project.
Governor Akeredolu leaves here for Ifedore, where his supporters are already waiting for him. He then makes for the palace of the traditional ruler for royal blessings. Here, the traditional rulers highlight some of the projects within their domain which endear Mr. Akeredolu to them. The governor insists he is just doing his job.
Àwọn iṣẹ́ díẹ̀ tá a ṣe ń bí iṣẹ́ díẹ̀ tọ́lọ́run wà lọ́wọ́ láti ṣe torí kò sí ọ̀tá lè ṣe tọ́lọ́run wà lọ́wọ́ sí Amẹ́ríkà tó ra wa pé aṣọ̀nà wọn tí gbà tí wọ́n wá sí Bùyì wàhálà tá wà bí ká tó débẹ̀ tá lọ campaign mo sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ pé aṣọ̀nà yìí Ọlọ́run dẹ̀ fún wa ní agbára láàrin ọdún mẹ́ta àbọ̀ láti ṣe.
He has done a lot of road within the local government. He has touched most of the schools in the local government. He has even given us rice mill industry here, and quite a lot of things that he has done within the local government that I cannot mention.
Back to the campaign ground, speaker after speaker takes to the stage to assure Governor Akeredolu of their support. The residents in all the towns and communities in a federal local government area insist the show of support here only demonstrates how much votes Governor Akeredolu should expect come October the 10th.
To the Niger Delta now. The Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godwin Akpabio, says the ministry is committed to harmonizing the Niger Delta Region Development Master Plan with the Niger Delta Action Plan to produce one regional roadmap for development in the country's oil-rich region. Senator Akpabio made the comments at the new Niger Delta Development Commission permanent headquarters in Port Harcourt, where he harped on the need for collaboration and synergy in efforts at developing the region. The minister regretted that the NDDC had not lived up to expectations, but congratulated the NDDC's acting managing director and members of the IMC for doing a good job in delivering the new office complex, which he described as a good story for the NDDC.
I realized that the first attempt at Niger Delta development, a commission of this nature, was started in 1958. Then you look at the resources that have come from this area to assist Nigeria to develop. Then you turn around and look at the shanties, even around you, and then look at the people on canoes struggling to look for clean water. Then you will know that either we lost focus or we lost track of the developmental plan of the Niger Delta. So we are, as a ministry, committed to harmonizing the regional development plan as well as the Niger Delta Action Plan which was put together under the regime of, I think, Senior Libe, then as managing director. So we intend to harmonize it so that we can have one regional development master plan so that all the IOCs and associated companies that are working here will have one plan in mind.
We have more now on celebrations regarding Nigeria's 60th anniversary. More Thanksgiving services held in other states across the country. Reflection on unity of the country and equity were the watchwords. As the country's 60th independence celebration draws closer, there is an air of reflection blowing across the country. And this is kicking off in worship centers with thanksgiving for the milestone age and sermons. In Lagos, it's celebration time. Then comes prayers for the state and the nation.
Let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end in Lagos State, in Nigeria, in my life, in the name of Jesus. Let us pray to God.
Moving to Ogun and Ondo states, the joy of the new age is reason for dancing. The state governors, Dapo Abiodun of Ogun and Rotimi Akeredolu of Ondo, see the period as one where reflection of the past should guide the future.
I still believe that this anniversary calls for solemn reflection. We need now to have an introspection.
Yes, we have issues that we need to face. Yes, we must look at how to create jobs. We must look at how to ensure that we have uninterrupted power supply. We must ensure that we have adequate road infrastructure. We must ensure that we have food dependency and food security.
The procession in Jos, the Plateau State capital, is a thankful one. The state governor, Samuel Lalong, sees the unity of the country in the midst of all the storm as divine.
This country has gone through a lot. We've gone through civil war, we've gone through several crises, and that we are still living together is something that this country is blessed.
In Bayelsa State, praise is raised to God for the country. Governor Dwoye Diri, however, has some criteria he feels the nation seems to be lacking.
But let me again seize the opportunity to call on our leaders that a country cannot develop where there is no fairness and where there is no justice, where there is no equity. And those are some of the things that are accounting for our very slow pace of development.
Nigeria, 60 years of a nation with a history deeper than its age. While the News at 10 returns, we'll open discussion on celebrating Nigeria at 60, with a focus on the country's historical progressions. We'll also be joined by our data analyst, Babajide Ogusonwo. Join us again. Welcome back to the News at 10. It is now less than 100 hours to the 60th anniversary celebration for Nigeria's independence. What does the past reveal, and what are the scenarios for the next 60 years? To share insights on some growth and development indicators is data and information analyst Babajide Ogusonwo, the man with the answers tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Amarachi.
Good evening. So any word for that can describe the nation at 60?
Maybe another word, maybe a phrase. I'll share some of that with you, especially how much was a newspaper sold 6 decades ago, and what are the implications? And I think you'll be surprised. But tonight I'd like to talk about what a wise woman former U.S. author Sherilyn Kenyon said, "In our past lies our future. In our past lies our future." Now, what does she mean? It means that by our hands and decisions we make, we will be damned or we will survive. So what do I mean by our hands? What does the Nigeria hand look like? And what decisions have we taken in the last 6 decades? Now, what does the Nigerian hand look like? The Nigerian hand looks like the winner of tonight's Big Brother, Lekon Agbeleche, 26-year-old Lekon. Now, what do I mean by this? If you call the National Bureau of Statistics and ask how many Lekons do we have, how many 26-year-old Nigerians are living today, the answer shows that 66% of today's Nigerian citizens are like Lekon, below the age of 26. You heard me right. 66% of Nigerians are below the age of 26. It means that we have a very young nation. But what decisions have we taken? So yes, we've seen that is what Nigeria looks like. Nigeria looks like the Lekons. But what decisions have we made? And if we look at the history, our history since 1960, especially, I might not have one word, but that phrase, the cost of living, here's what you find. 1960 or 1963, in the 60s, when we had independence, a newspaper in 1960 was sold for 3 pence. In 1970, newspapers still sold 3 pence. 1980, 15 kobo. 1990, it moved to 1 naira, 50 kobo. By 2000, the newspaper had moved to 50 naira, 2010, 150 naira, and today, 200 naira. And so we've seen from 3 pence in 1960 to 200 naira. So if there's a nightmare in the last 60 days, it will be the cost of living. But if there's a dream, that dream is in the young Nigerian population. And that's really what has happened. It's been a mixture of rising cost of living, which has affected several things, and the opportunities in that young Nigerian population.
It would be nice to understand what the dream is. Do you have any idea what it looks like, and what would increase productivity, to cater for this young generation?
It's the population. The dream is to be able to understand our population growth, especially if we take a look at what has happened in the last 60 days from a population perspective. Remember in 1960 when we had independence, even the United Kingdom had a population that was more than Nigeria, 54 million. Nigeria's population in 1960 was 45 million. We've seen population grow exponentially, as that from 45 million in 1960 to 115 million by 2000, and we are now at 220 million. Amarachi, here's why this is important. The forecast, we've seen what has happened in the past 60 years. But the question we should ask is, what will happen in the next 6 decades? And based on our population growth, by 2080, Nigeria's population will be 1.4 billion. In other words, Nigeria's population in the next 60 years will be more than the population of Africa today. And so we need to look at what is the vision for being able to manage the young population and to be able to look at the opportunities that lie ahead. Like I started, in our past lies our future.
Rajadin, you've given us stuff to think about tonight. Thanks again.
On Thursday, I'll share some new insights with you.
Okay, no words from your grandfather tonight, but thanks again for coming tonight.
The pleasure is all mine.
I appreciate your being here. In other news now, another batch of 70 stranded Nigerian girls evacuated from Lebanon by the Lebanese community in Nigeria and the federal government have arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja today. A spokesperson for the Lebanese community in Nigeria says the evacuation is in fulfillment of the community's resolve to ensure that no Nigerian is left stranded in Lebanon. There have been several pleas from Nigerian girls stranded in the country seeking assistance to enable them return home after being lured to Lebanon by human traffickers.
Basically, we saw a viral video a long time ago, of which we started bringing a lot of stranded girls from Lebanon. We already brought 470 girls, and today we are here because we just received another 70 girls from Lebanon that were sponsored by Triacta Limited, Mr. Ali Abu Farhat, SJ Abed, Mr. Donald Abed, and Holborn, Apple Empire, Mr. Habib Jafar. They are the one who sponsored through Silver Wings. Silver Wings is the charterer who made 50% discount to bring everybody back. Today we received 70 girls, safe and sound. Thank God, everybody, as we promised before, we are bringing everybody. Now, we want to really thank the Minister of Aviation, Mr. Hadi Sirika. We want to thank his Permanent Secretary, Engineer Hassan Musa. We want to thank his Director of Air Transport Management, Mr. Mohammed Naibi, for all the effort they have shown us. And also not to forget the Foreign Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs, not to forget the Lebanese embassy in Nigeria and the Nigerian ambassador to Lebanon.
Some Nigerian youth will embark on unplanned and illegal migration abroad with the hope and promise that when they get there, things will be rosy, having narrating their sour experience. This is a story of 31-year-old Chukwuka Onyegese from Olu local government area of Imo State, who sold the only landed property of his family to embark on illegal immigration to Jakarta in Indonesia, but was disappointed to realize that all the promises his travel agents and friends gave him were false. After 2 years of hiding from immigration officials and law enforcement agencies, he was arrested for a lack of legal papers and detained for months. He speaks to our correspondent, Eyitope Kuti.
In June 2017, a report by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees showed that in the year 2016, about 602,000 Nigerians attempted to migrate to Europe through illegal means. Out of this number, about 27,000 lost their lives through the process, either in the Mediterranean Sea or the Sahara Desert, while a large number who cannot be accounted for are either in detention abroad or missing. Reports also show that the lure to migrate abroad is often motivated by 3 factors: economic, family or peer pressure, and the social media. 31-year-old Chukwuka Onyegese from Osu local government area of Imo State is one of the Nigerian youths who fell for family pressure to seek greener pastures abroad. To actualize his dream, he had to sell his family's only landed property to embark on illegal migration to Jakarta, Indonesia. 2 years after his sojourn, it became clear that he had been sold a dummy by his travel agent. Things got so bad in Indonesia that he was apprehended by the authorities and detained for living in the country illegally. His plight became public knowledge after he made a post on the social media sometimes in July 2020.
I'm about to give up over there. Nobody to help me. My friends, I asked my friends, give me money, this and that. He said, no, guy, not me carry you come over. I said, okay now. So I have to make the video.
Indonesia was not Chukwuka's first attempt to migrate out of the country.
I spent almost 1.something million then. After everything, they deport me back in Egypt. Egypt said that I have fake. It's not real, it's fake. So they detain me 4 days in say, send me back to Nigeria. So I have to.
Having made it back home in one piece, Chukwuka, like the biblical prodigal son, is appealing to the government to give him a new lease of life.
What I'm asking government to just help me and my family, if they can take me back to my business. I say electrical in Alaba International Market, Lagos.
The Imo State government, Chukwuka's home state, however, says it's more concerned about changing the mindset of young people whose desperation to travel abroad has often ended in tales of woes.
The government realizes that this is a problem. The government will sit down with stakeholders, policy makers, and then we'll sit down and start to actually untangle these knots that have been in existence for years.
The story of Chukwuka Onyegese is definitely another eye-opener, especially for the youths who have been brainwashed into believing that they can only change their lives by seeking greener pastures abroad through illegal means. Chukwuka is one of the lucky ones. Several others who have embarked on similar journeys have not been lucky to make it back alive to tell their stories. Iyitope Kuteyi, Channels Television News.
It's been 2 years since a deadly gas explosion rocked Lafia, the Nasarawa state capital, killing at least 30 persons and destroying property worth millions of naira. The only survivor of that incident, Peniel Aluga, is now 2 years old. Peniel, who was born on the day of the incident, was saved by doctors from the Dalhatu Araf Specialist Hospital, Lafia, after the prognosis indicated no chance of survival for his mother, who sustained 95-degree burns from the incident. Our correspondent Halima Gayom now brings us up to date on how Peniel is doing.
Wreckage from a tragic explosion still staring residents in the face.
10th of September 2018, 2 years ago, sad tales emanated from this fuel and gas station as a result of an act of negligence by the owner. Lives were lost, properties amounting to millions destroyed, but the life of a young child was saved.
Go! Now 2 years old, Peniel, whose birthday, 10th of September, refreshes a devastating memory for his father, is however his only source of hope and joy, even as he struggles to get over his wife's demise.
It has not been easy, to be sincere. It's just like yesterday. I felt very bad from the side of my wife, but I also give God the glory for giving me the baby.
The Dalhatu Araf Specialist Hospital is where Peniel's journey to life at 32 weeks began. Doctors here took a swift decision to rescue him from his mother, who sustained 95 degrees burn with a near zero survival chance.
If, for example, that patient was not brought to the hospital, or maybe a hospital that was not like this, chances are both the mother and the baby would have been lost. But we had to take the decision quickly to save especially the baby.
Trying hard not to shed tears, a consultant obstetrician who conducted the cesarean section recalls the incident.
I could remember those tearful eyes. She held my hand and told me, "Doctor, do whatever you will do, just ensure that nothing happens to my baby." And I promised her I was going to try my best.
Weighing 1.8 kg at 32 weeks, Peniel had respiratory challenge among others. Dr. Bello is the consultant pediatrician who heads the special care baby unit at the hospital. He managed him for 3 weeks, just like he's doing for these babies. After his discharge, Peniel came down with another dire condition that needed attention. An operation was carried out by this consultant at 7 months.
We optimized him and arranged and did a surgery for him, which is called herniatomy. And at the same sitting, we were able to do circumcision for the boy. And today, he is kicking fine.
A cry of my baby were the chants of Peniel's mother at the time of the incident. 2 years after, her baby is alive, hearty and bouncy, unlike a typical premature child. Peniel is the only survivor of the blast that claimed over 30 lives, including his mother, who died on September 15, 5 days after his birth. Halima Gayam, Channels Television News.
The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases worldwide has surpassed 32.4 million, with the death toll exceeding 985,000, according to the World Health Organization. Countries still with the highest infection rates are the United States, India, and Brazil. Here's a global update. The total number of cases in the United States has surpassed 7.07 million, and deaths drawing near 205,000. U.S. COVID-19 cases topped 5 million on August 9th, By the end of the month, it hit 6 million and 7 million as of Friday, September 25th. Meanwhile, more than 695,000 cases have been confirmed in Florida, accounting for 13.38% of its population, just as the state prepares to fully reopen. In the Americas, infections in Argentina have topped 700,000, with new daily infections and deaths among the top 5 globally. Argentina reported a rolling 7-day average of 11,082 new cases on Saturday. Many citizens are outraged by the numbers and are already weary from months of lockdown that had failed to slam the brakes on the pandemic. The number of cases in Colombia has surpassed 800,000, a day after deaths from COVID-19 climbed above 25,000. The Andean country has 806,038 confirmed cases of the virus, according to the Health Ministry, with 25,296 reported deaths. Active cases number 78,956. Meanwhile, hundreds are out on the streets of Madrid demanding a different COVID-19 response from the regional government other than a lockdown. Authorities had announced mobility restrictions in areas where a total of 850,000 people live, sparking discrimination complaints and protests. The government says transmission levels in the area exceed 1,000 per 100,000 people. Thousands of workers protested across Portugal demanding higher wages and more government action to protect jobs threatened by the coronavirus pandemic. And finally, Brazil's first monument to commemorate those killed by the COVID-19 pandemic was completed this week in the Penitência Cemetery in the port area of Rio de Janeiro. The monument is 39 meters in length and weighs about 3 tons, with the names of deceased COVID-19 patients engraved on it, as per wishes of close relatives. A number of civilians have been killed in clashes that erupted between Armenian and Azerbaijan forces in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Both sides have blamed each other for launching air and artillery attack and declaring martial law and total military mobilization on either side of the border. According to the Armenian Defense Ministry, an attack on civilian settlements, including the regional capital Stepanakert, began around 8 a.m. local time. It said it had shot down 2 helicopters and 3 drones and destroyed 3 tanks. The Armenian government then declared martial law and total military mobilization. Intensive shelling of several villages has led to civilians being killed or wounded and severe damage to infrastructure. Projections on TV are suggesting Swiss voters have rejected a proposal to end an accord with the EU on the movement of people via a referendum. Switzerland is not a member of the EU but currently accepts free movement so that it can have access to trade and cooperate with Brussels in areas like transport and education. Supporters of the anti-free movement plans say it would allow Switzerland to control its borders and select only the immigrants it wants. Opponents argue it would plunge a healthy economy into recession and deprive hundreds of thousands of Swiss citizens of their freedom to live and work across Europe. Sports now. Non-contact sport is making a gradual return in Nigeria, and golf is not left out. The golfers at the Ikoyi Golf Club in Lagos are happy to return, but with the pandemic still raging, health and safety protocols cannot be ignored.
It's been over 3 months golfing action returned on the PGA Tour after the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown in March. The situation is the same in Lagos. Nigeria Golf is back. And the course at the Ikoyi Club is busy again. While these golfers hope to maintain a high level of professionalism, they're also conscious of safety protocols.
You can see quite a number of measures we put in place, like the automatic sanitizers and wash hand systems, and the fact that people has to be the temperature readings and the social distancing marks, both pre-starting point and at the starting desk.
Almost everything we're doing now is structured and starting in phases. Now almost your game is booked, your time at the range is booked, your time with the pros are booked. We are booked every time that we have so that we have control, and if we have any issue, it will help us do tracking.
And this is no doubt a big relief for golfers who've missed the action during the lockdown.
I don't know which analogy, would be appropriate to capture, what we felt, but it was very difficult because golf is not just a game of exercise, but it's games that have taken a huge part of our lives, and is entwined with, many things that we do. So it was very harrowing and difficult 5 months staying away.
I was a bit rusty coming in, but with a few games now, I am getting back to the game gradually. I actually lost my rhythm as a result because, when you have stayed off the game for long, a lot of things stay off you, But with this opening now, it is giving us the opportunity to practice the game we love.
Playing golf in the pandemic is a bit challenging. However, the fun can be sustained if the guidelines are respected to limit the spread of COVID-19.
In the English Premier League, Jamie Vardy scored a hat-trick as Leicester City stormed to the top of the English Premier League table with a stunning 5-2 victory at Manchester City earlier today. It is the first time a team coached by Guardiola will be conceding 5 goals in his 686th game as a manager. Brendan Rodgers' side moved top of the table following a third successive win to start the season. Patrick Bamford continued his hot streak in front of goal with an 88th minute winner as Leeds United beat rivals Sheffield United 1-0 at Bramall Lane earlier today. Callum Wilson scored a controversial stoppage time penalty, causing Jose Mourinho to storm down the tunnel as Tottenham threw away 2 points with a 1-1 draw at home to Newcastle. Valtteri Bottas has won the Russian Grand Prix for Mercedes after teammate and championship leader Lewis Hamilton collected 2-time penalties for infringements before the race had even started. Hamilton, who started on pole position in Sochi, hoping for a 91st Formula One victory to equal Ferrari great Michael Schumacher's all-time record, finished third behind Red Bull's Max Verstappen. The Britain's lead over Bottas shrunk to a still healthy 44 points after 10 of 17 races, with the Finn collecting a bonus point for fastest lap.
The first opportunity, actually, it was a bit compromised because there was like a massive bee or something that hit my visor just before braking, so I couldn't really see when I should brake. So that's why I went too deep. But I knew it's going to be a long race after that, and with the medium tire I had, there will be opportunities, but obviously Lewis had the penalty. So yeah, once I was in clean air, I felt the pace was pretty awesome and could really control everything.
Israel Adesanya has called out American Jared Cannonier after emphatically stopping Paulo Costa at UFC 253 on Fight Island. The last style bender knocked out his bitter rival in Abu Dhabi after putting on striking clinic to secure a second-round victory. After the win, Adesanya said he wants to face Cannonier next, provided he beats former champion Robert Whittaker at UFC 254. Cannonier defeated David Branch, Anderson Silva, and Jack Hermansson in the space of a year to propel himself into title contention. And finally, LeBron James says the job is not done after leading the Los Angeles Lakers back into the NBA Finals for the first time in 10 years. LeBron recorded a triple-double of 38 points, 16 rebounds and 10 assists as the Lakers beat the Denver Nuggets 117-107 to close out the Western Conference Finals 4-1. LA will now play the winner between the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat for a chance to win their 17th NBA championship. And the main news again. Federal government delegation today met with the organized labor on possibilities of averting tomorrow's planned protest and strike. Also today, Boko Haram terrorists again attacked Governor Babagana Zulum's convoy in Borno State, 2 kilometers away from Baga. No death was recorded in the attack. And fighting broke out today between Armenia and Azerbaijan over disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region, with both civilians and combatants killed. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night.